Good evening, guys. Can you hear me well? I guess you can. Yeah, excellent. So, good evening. I'm Rokas. I'm from StartupHighway, and I am going to try and answer what makes a good pitch. And before I go ahead, don't try and copy my slides. They're really a bad example. So it's always very interesting to listen to Eddie. He's a very entertaining speaker. And I think he's geared towards a pitch that you do in events like this. And obviously, he has had a lot of success at that. You know, he goes on stage, he goes on small stage, he goes on big stage, and he attracts attention. In my presentation, I'd like to focus on what happens after that, because that's not the last time you'll be pitching. Some might argue that you'll keep pitching throughout your business development. That is, you know, once you attracted somebody's attention, you'll go to meetings, you'll try to sell your product, you'll go to partners, and so on. So I'll focus, most of my comments are most useful when you've already attracted somebody's attention, say on stage, some investor has noticed you, or you just, I don't know, got an invitation to meet an investor and you come and meet him at their office, for instance, or somewhere else. I'll speak briefly about that. And you deliver slightly different kind of pitch. Most of what Eddie said, you still use there. But once you're pitching to a limited audience, not on stage, your goal is not only to retain attention, but also to convince, typically the investor, to invest. If it's a partner, to become a partner, a client buy, so on, and maybe a potential co-founder to join you. All right, so I'm also going to assume that we're talking at early stage here, right? So you don't have loads and loads of traction, really impressive advisory boards and several investors behind you. So I kind of, you know, take this in perspective. If you're a really advanced company, then some of the things you have to add or change. Okay, when do we pitch, or where do we pitch at all? Now, I've listened to a lot of pitches, mostly in the office. I've traveled to quite many investors, mostly around Europe, and I met them on various occasions. And mostly you meet them in their office, and it's a completely different setting. You sit in an office, there are little people, it's stingingly quiet. You know, you have someone really smart across the table. There might be more than you, like you might be a team of 1 or 3 founders. Often the pitching founder comes only alone, and then you have maybe 3 to 5 investors at the other end of the table. So it's a little bit of a humbling audience. Keep that in mind when thinking about how do you behave in your pitch. You know, do you move around like I do? You know, how do you feel in that audience? One thing is when you prepare to go on stage and be a little bit artistic about it, and another time is when you prepare to sit down at a table and have some of the serious talks going on. Now, however, as the saying goes, expect the unexpected. Things might happen. As an example, this summer I went to an investor in London, a known fund, serious people. We arrive at their office. The partner who I am to meet is slightly late by a few minutes. Sometimes they can be like tremendously late, and you know, be ready to do that. Some people do that on purpose, and some people are just, you know, bad at time planning, and they arrive half an hour later to your meeting. But since you flew all over across Europe to meet them, well, I guess you want to meet them anyway. So in that particular case, a partner emerges and like, I'm very sorry, but there is no free meeting rooms, so we'll go downstairs and we'll go to a cafeteria. Is that all right? And of course you say all right, because no, cafeteria, I don't pitch in cafeterias. We ended up in a cafe that was particularly packed, particularly hot, and particularly loud in ambient noises. And sometimes you have to pitch in environments like that. So when kind of imagining how I will look when pitching, where I'll be, and who I will be, both put yourself in a boardroom of most expensive London location, with the most senior people you could think of, as well as with the same people in a cafe downstairs. It happens. I met once in a conference. I was having a really good conference. A lot of good meetings, networking, everything. It was so good that after 2 days I was completely dried without energy. And I asked the guys to take me to the airport. Oh, here's a taxi, someone's getting the taxi, take the taxi, go to the airport, goodbye, thank you for coming. Well, great. So I get in this taxi, and there sits an old guy who, obviously I'm still in my pitching mood, and hi, I'm Rokas, I do this, I invest, so on and so forth. And after like 10 minutes, I said, oh, by the way, what do you do? Maybe less, maybe not 10 minutes, but I'm quite the chattery type. So the guy goes like, oh yeah, I've established this small investment fund, 40 millions, and it was kind of, we got bored with this small stuff, so we went ahead and founded another one that was $300 million fund. So it's also pretty small, and I sit on the boards of this and that companies, and I'm like, wow, this must be the most senior person I ever met. And that all happens in a traffic jam that was, in my favor, very long traffic jam in a really bad taxi cab with the driver swearing and everything. So the point being here that try and put yourself in these different environments and be ready for that when thinking ahead about what to do. Now, what to say? I'm going to quickly recapture something of what Eddie said about what you should mention. I mean, I've listened to quite many bad pitches and quite many bad structures. I want to hear as an investor, and we did invest in a number of companies, as an investor, there are a number of things I want to hear in more or less that order. It comes down to personal preference. You know, someone might like to hear about the team first and vice versa, so on. But I'd say that's the prayer. If you're thinking how to structure your presentation, this is how you go, and I'll get to that. And you notice that traction is not here, and the how much money you ask for is not here, because if on stage, maybe not always a good idea to disclose all your financial numbers, and I'm assuming you don't have any traction. All right, what to start with? So here I'm going to go ahead and contradict Eddie a little bit, but then it's up to you to kind of make the final call, or maybe Mindaugas can add to the score and then side with one opinion or the other. I always like the startup, and I always recommend the startup to start with the name, with the company, and with the one-liner. Now, there might be different explanations for such. The one-liner is, of course, the most important. And you could see on Eddie's slide, the first slide was what they do, put in a simple terms. And I think this is really important, both to remind the investor or the audience, what are you talking about, to kind of set the setting, right? Because if you're going to go ahead and tell the user story, you might have people guessing, so what is this about? Is this a web tool? Is it a food product? Something like that, whatever. So you want them already zeroed in, so their thoughts gravitate around your idea. And you want them to understand. I've listened in so many pitches that after they're done pitching, or especially after they're done explaining their product, think, okay, what is it that you actually do? Or this fantastic spaceship that you explained, it also travels through time and it does a number of other things, cooks pretty well. You know, what's the main use of it? So that's where one-liner comes in and is pretty useful. You explain in short, simple terms what it is. Try to avoid buzzwords. I've heard people talking about their cross-platform, social, vertically integrated, reverse marketing, whatever. Like, really? That, although technically that's the most accurate way to describe what you do, that really loses the audience. I mean, what? Again, you'll have them figuring the next 30 seconds what you actually said, and most of them will not actually get. Now, why name and company name is important? If you're on stage, then obviously you want to attract attention. You want them to remember who you are, what you did, and if they're to seek you out in the audience, or most likely in these events, you know, I'm sitting in the audience, someone on stage is interesting, it's quite hard for me to chase that guy if it's a big conference or a big event. It's more likely I'll be emailing someone like the organizer host, like whoever got the guy on the stage, or the girl in this case, and you can say, hey, I'm actually interested, and I remember the name or the startup name, one of the two. Now, the sad part of the story is if you're pitching to an investor at an office, especially if you're pitching to a high-load investor, chances are they're having full day of meetings with startups who pitch them for the first time every day. You know, they maybe read your case, they maybe exchange email conversation, maybe you met them at an event and convinced them that it's a good idea to meet with you, but chances are they simply don't remember. Now, although you still might end up getting money from these guys, and they will actually wholeheartedly love and know everything about your business. On the first meeting, or the first important meeting, chances are they don't remember. Starting with the name and the company name and one-liner is always a good idea to remember, especially if you had previous communication, and so that, you know, oh yeah, you're the guy who we met there, and you kind of got through the wall here so we could actually meet. So always good idea. And, you know, accents do come into play. You know, I speak with a very strong Eastern European accent, whatever. And some of you also speak with an accent. So, and we can't change that. Many investors are not native English speakers or also speak with an accent, so that's all fine. But at least get your name and your startup name without an accent. That's possible. It's not complicated. A couple evenings should get the job done. All right, so once you've through that, you start with the problem, just as Eddie described. And you have to make it hurt. People have to believe that your problem is the problem. You know, there is a reason why you're building. It will take you between, I don't know, 3 and 10 years of your life, you and your founders, and you're out to solve this. You want to eradicate that no longer the customer would have the pain that you're trying to solve, okay? So, and very often, I hear investors questioning, you know, is this stuff even worth doing? Happens with open source and such. You know, it seems like a small thing. You know, people can do it the other way around, and I'll speak about it when we get to competition. So you want to say, like, people are really dying from this. Mindaugas, who just left, he's in pharmaceutical business. I was going to use that as an example. I mean, 10 billion people die, okay, 10 million people die every year from this particular thing I'm trying to solve. It's a worthwhile cause. If it's not so crucial that people die from it, you can put a dollar tag to it, okay? Like in Eddie's case, there is a problem in web design industry. And you could say X amount of billion of dollars are lost because you saw his numbers, 30 to 80% faster the process with TrackDeck than without it. You can easily say that X amount of dollars are being wasted in web design industry because of this miscommunication. And once you put a pretty impressive dollar tag, like whatever, and you get to the same when you go to market, but it's slightly different. When you say already 10 billion are wasted, every year, every month, something like that, then people will not ask, okay, is this worth doing? No, they'll say, this is worth doing. You know, money lost or people died. At the end of the day, you have to communicate clearly. You have to find a way, an angle, to isolate that your problem is such that people understand that to solve this problem, they need you. Not it's part of a complex solution that involves 5 other solutions and so on and so forth, blah, 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 blah. This is complicated. So you have to leave them with a very clear message. This is the problem I'm after. It's big. It's massive. It needs to be solved. I'm after it. Typically, we have 1 to 3 slides for it. Typically 1. You have to, 1 slide over, you have to change the world and make that the most topical issue of the day for the next 5 minutes. Okay? And then you move on to solution, just like Caddy did. You save the day. Look this massive problem, and I solve it all. Yes, you don't go into details. And that is typically very dangerous if your product is really technical. You have so much to tell. There are so many features, so many integrations, so many good use cases. There has to be a core value driver. #1 use case scenario. Even if there are a few that kind of tend to be general, you have to pick one and say, people that had the problem use my product or will use my product, and it's completely solved. Completely here being the keyword. You have to find a way to explain your problem in such angle, even if it's a complex problem. And in business, mostly problems are complex. In healthcare, even more so. Right, so you have to find an angle that once you identify what your solution is, everybody's like, oh yeah, that solves it. Like in Eddie's case, the problem is within the communication. Web design industry, communication between client, blah, 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 making the new thing, and my product completely solves that one part of the process of that industry. Okay? So once I've kind of, as an investor, already convinced that, okay, there is a problem worthwhile, and you actually have a solution to it. So how much money is there? Total addressable money. How many people will pay you for what you want to do or what is doing? And as interestingly put out in the previous discussion, of course, don't start with my home market, my town, Vilnius, Baltic. You know, start with the global scale. There is a huge chunk of money, at least $5 billion, preferably a lot more, that are being spent, preferably. In many cases, people tend to say, maybe there are 1 million customers who might want this product to use. Best if you can say there already is millions of companies or people who are already doing this, and they're spending so much money on this. You can try and connect to larger industries. If you're selling something online, e-commerce is a massive industry. Obviously, it has segments and verticals. But whatever the biggest number you can go after, we're going after this. Now, one thing we do when thinking about startups, so long as the market is realistic, and you might want to ground it on some authority numbers. It's not you who say that there are so many money spent on this particular problem, but it's Reuters, it's Nielsen, or it's Harvard Business Review who says that much money is being spent there. Okay, so when I think about startup, and one of the criteria when I think, is it worthwhile getting involved with it? I say, what's the 1% of that? How much it will cost me to get to 1% of whatever market they identified, and how much money we'll make on the 1%. And the equation of this cost to market of 1% and then profit in that has to be star high. If on that 1% I can't make a super success story, then chances are we're in a pretty crowded space and it's going to be pretty tough to make money. So you want to put up this number that's believable, reasonable, and people think, okay, it's worthwhile. Even if we will not become super saturated like we own 10% of the market, even 10%, even if we get to 1%, we're already very successful and lucky. All right, now how do you charge? Charge the customers and users, whatever. Now there are a number of buzzwords here, and here buzzwords come into play. Learn all the business models. Because chances are, in a conversation during or after the presentation, you'll be confronted and people will actually ask you, what about this? So like in-app sales, transactional business model, and so on, so freemium and such. Know the topical keywords. Here you can use them. If you're pitching to an investor, chances are they know it all. So you can save yourself a lot of time rather than explaining, here is what I do, and you can purchase for extra, for extra, for extra. It's a freemium business model. When people exceed a certain limit, then we charge them for extra and so on. Now, picking the right business model is going to be pretty complicated. Several projects. For instance, take Vinted. What's their business model? They have advertising. They have transactions, or not everywhere, I think. And they have in-app purchases, right? Say you are building a Vinted-like scenario, and you want to convince the investor. Start with one. My main money mule, if all else fails, is going to be this business model. And I have the numbers. There is enough, blah, 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 blah. Sorry, I reversed this only once. I'm going to go back a slide and tell you one more thing about the market. The numbers for business models that you're going to use. It's very important when talking about the market. It's not enough just to know your market. Know your customer on top of that. If you can display it maybe in the slides, not use time talking about it. It's also very important to know how to get to your customer. Go-to-market channels, the right channels, conversion rates, numbers. If not on slides, chances are in a serious conversation, you'll be confronted right after or even interrupted. How you will get to them. Is this cost effective? And knowing your numbers here is key. I think it makes a distinction between a, wishful founder and a founder who's on top of his game. If you're going to use PR, if you're going to get mentioned in Hacker News or in TechCrunch, how much referrals that will get you? Ask Eddie. He knows. He's been on TechCrunch, right? Pick up this information. If you're going to buy advertising, what are going to be the conversion rates, the CPMs and such? At which point, when you get to business models, you have to show that you'll make enough money. If your target is advertising, and it might well be, a lot of startups go for that, although it's not the preferred by investors typically, you have to say, this is the price I'll be acquiring my users for, and this is the price I'll be monetizing them. And if the second number is greater than the first, then chances are people will give you quite many money. If you're going to just take a seed capital and turn 200,000 into 500,000 or even 300,000 in a year, then chances are that after a year they'll give you $1 million or $10 million because your startup is a money-making machine. All right, know all of your competition, like in every way you could think. I've heard so many times people saying, we don't have a competition. It is never the case. Everybody has competition. If you're selling sneakers, bicycle is your competitor. Public transportation is your competitor. People make do today without your product. They somehow survive and deal with the challenge that the problem is in some way. So there is a competition, direct or indirect one, substitute or whatever. However, today startups growing more and more popular. Chances are, if you're pitching something, 5 other teams in the same town are doing the same thing. Chances are there is a team in every major city around Europe or around the world doing the same thing, and some of them are quite competent in doing what you do. If you're onto a really interesting trend, then always investors know 2 or 3 really exciting companies that got funded recently. They do the same thing. When explaining your competition, it's best if you can not just say that, hey, I know my competition, hey, I know I have advantages, but also say, my competition comes in certain groups. Like, we're better than this group like that, and this like that, and third group we beat in that way. That way you show that you have good idea of all your competition. Now, a particularly embarrassing moment happens when you pitch to investor and they say, oh yeah, this is like this startup that's very local. So whenever pitching to investors, you do good to investigate what are the players in your field, in their geography. So ultimately, it often ends up so, this sounds interesting. It sounds very similar to something we've invested last year. You always want to check their portfolios and see if they're in the space, and you want to use that in your pitch. We work a little bit like that, but we're different. We're going to make here money where they didn't, or so on and so forth. Or we're going to synergize with them, whatever. Something you can't prepare to, and something I actually heard quite often. Oh, you sound exactly like what my friend has invested in. And it happens with investors. Everywhere investors are a small community. Even for London, most of the investors know each other, and they know each other deal flow. So you might want to keep a track on whatever the news are in your sector, so you're always on top of your game. If someone comes and says, I don't have a competition, and I can find a competitor on Google within 5 minutes, chances are that startup is never getting funded because they fail at one of the crucial skills or kind of business development skills, identifying competition and positioning themselves in the market. Then you get to the team, all right? Why the team slide is there at all? Why does team matter? Right? What do you say about the team if the team matters? We have a saying, it's not ours, but we like it a lot. When it comes down to investing in startup, 5 things matters. The idea, the team, the team, the team, and the team, all right? So more often than not, investors invest in people who are the startup and not their business idea, which also matters, but not as much as the team. So once you get to the team slide, if you're slightly more advanced and you have 12 people, again, like Caddy did, don't talk about all 12. You have only 3 guys. Now, don't just say, and I've seen this a lot, we have a good team. We work as a team. That's a bad line. Don't just say, it's me, John, and Jessica. That gives me nothing. Tell me you are the best team for this project. And not just in terms of, John has lots of developing experience and Jessica is great at sales. Tell me what makes them professionals, what makes them the most competent. They've done this in their life. They've attacked this challenge. They worked for this company. They learned from that. They've been awarded, whatever. Okay, you're junior, you're still in university, tell something that makes you a fighter. I've jumped off a cliff, whatever the cliff was. But you have to make the investors emotionally invest in your team before they make the financial commitment to your business. All right, last slide. So here, if you're sitting in front of an investor, here is going to say, all of this, yours for X amount of money. I'm seeking this amount of money, and I'm going to achieve this and that. The earlier you identify, provided you know, the milestones you're going to achieve with the investment, and be realistic here. You're not going to be Facebook big or Pinterest big after the seed round, and you're not going to go on and become super successful company. Chances are you'll need more money in 12 months, and you'll come back and say, give me more. But what is exactly? You'll build a product if you don't have one. If you have, you'll attract certain traction, build an audience. If you have that already, you'll monetize. What levels will you reach? Put numbers, and also tell what you spend it on. People are interested. Top funds, particularly, are watchful for marketing expenses. They want to know that you reach that level where your acquisition cost is lower than your lifetime value, before they give you any money for marketing. Before they give you money for marketing. They give you money for developing the case, building the product, assembling the right team, figuring out the right use case. Once you have all of that, even if that costed $1 million, and that is typically the case, then they'll give you 10 million, but you already have the money-making machine. At last slide, always call for action. There is a reason you're doing this. You want them to become users, sell, or invest. If you're sitting at investor, do say, I want your investment. I want your money. This is why I'm here. I'm not here to make intros. I'm not here to make best friends, talk a lot, or have 5 follow-on meetings. I'm here to raise money. I might even have a deadline, but that's advanced. Let's stick with just say the fact that you do want money. Now, if you're sitting with an experienced investor, you'll have a barrage of questions. Typically, while you're pitching, they will not let you finish. They will say, oh, okay, I heard the elevator pitch. I've invested in 3 startups like this before. I know everything about the market. Jump to whatever, your team. Oh, team is good. Go back to the problem, or go back, and you'll jump around. And I've seen presentations like this. And you have to have no aggravation about this. Oh, cool. You want to drive the conversation? Let's jump here and there. I'll tell you about everything. Be prepared to have a lot of questions. You know, in order, out of order, whatever. Be prepared to have a lot of criticism. Maybe in a form of advice, maybe in a form of test. Be prepared to be provoked. They'll test you as a person, they'll test you as a business case, they'll test your resolve, they'll test your knowledge. Have a 2 or 3 levels deep why answer to everything. Why is this your market? Why is this the right market? Why is it that cost? Why is it this number? Blah, 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 blah. You know, and this happens typically. And some heated debates ensue after these presentations. And if the debate is heated, it probably shows your light as a founder. You have to be professional. You have to know. If you don't, you have to also you have to conduct it about in a professional way. Very good question. We're just working on that. I don't have a final answer. I'll give you in 2 weeks. Or we don't have final. We've done tests. We've done this, that, and we haven't arrived at a conclusive answer. But I'll get back to you. Thanks for asking. I don't know. If something came to worse and like the investor shot somewhere completely in the dark, oh, that is a very good idea. Thank you. Don't try and hide around. Oh, I forgot this, or sorry, I don't know, or try to say, no, 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 you're asking the wrong question. The important question is here and so on. Don't do that. Have the answers. Funny thing, if an investor, right after your pitch, goes smiling, very interesting, thank you for coming, I'm so excited. Excited is the keyword, actually. You know, let's go into questions. That means he's probably not a decision maker, for real. I've sat through quite many of these. You know, I've sat in one meeting where there was an absolutely key partner. It was in the evening, right, the last meeting of the day. We just finished our presentation, and he went like, oh, hell, I have to invest in another one. And that's what happens, right? You know, partners who are decision makers, they're serious about it. If they seriously liked what you're presenting, yes, they will say phrases like, I want to follow up, I have more questions, they will jump on it. But they will be not super exciting, gibbery, and will not jump around the table, oh yeah, finally you come here to pitch to me. Typically that's associates. And you know, you'll learn these titles as you fundraise between a partner and associate and such. And associates go around and say, oh, I'm so excited, I have something to show my board, I'm cool, I'm cool as an associate. So you know, keep this in perspective that serious guys. Also, partners who are typically who have invested their own money in a fund, or simply investing, angels who invest their own money, they will not show you how excited they are, because then it's a valuation debate, right? You'll say, hey, I want 2 million valuation, and they'll go, no, I want just only 1 million. If he'll be very excited, then it will be very difficult for him to come back at that valuation, which is another interesting point. You should always have an answer on how much money you want, what will it use it for, what will achieve with that money, and how many shares you want to give away for that investment. Preferably with a good argumentation. You know, if you're not so certain, have a range. If you're not certain at all, try and go for a line saying, we'd rather keep the valuation open at this point, because the number of shares and the valuation is related. And by that, it doesn't mean that you don't know. It means you want a convertible with a discount, and you do not set the valuation in this round. I will not get in details unless you ask me afterwards what that means. All right, what happens after? Do you want to say anything more? The key point of all these conversations is about selling yourself. You know, as I've said, if the team counts more than the product, then within the team, there are 5 things that count. The team, the leader, the leader, the leader, and the leader, right? And chances are the leader is the one giving the pitch. If not, that already begs the question, why not? Okay? So they want to feel very confident about you. They want to see that you are smarter than them in some way. You know better how to run this business. That's why you're building it. Their money is safe and productive with you. They'll make more money giving you the money rather than making it themselves. Not the product, but whatever they want. You are their best option to make money. And you have to show this. You have to radiate this confidence. Which leads us to this kind of last comment. With this confidence, you have to stay in control of your business. Know everything in detail. Have the right answers. Never apologize. You know, if you read Rework, then if you didn't, go read it. If you read, then you know what I'm talking about. You know, everything you've done has to appear so that all the last 6 months led very willingly to this meeting right now. Everything you've done, the way you prepared your presentation, the way you came to their city or their office, the way you built your product, you have to portray this in line. Yes, I'm on top of what I know. I'm doing it in the right way, and there is a reason. I thought about every move, and I have my argumentation. It might not be the best, you know. It's all up for debate, and you're there for advice as well. But you have to. I didn't go just at random and experiment. It wasn't that we pushed out our version. It was light MVP, but because we didn't want to invest more in it, and so on and so forth. You know, you have to appear like the best option for the investment. And with that anticlimactic ending, I'd probably like to end my shout presentation here tonight. Any questions?
What about what you said, presenting yourself? Is it wrong if you present what you did, like why you're suitable for the business in like second slide, or is it better to move it only to the end?
Your suitability should be determined by your actions. You don't say, you know, I was previously maybe in a company, I ran into this problem. You're suitable because you know your client, you know your market, you've built a product, or you're building a product, you assembled a team, and you have a good plan. Things like that and additions. So it's what you do shows that you're suitable. You should never answer the question directly. If the question arises, then already maybe there is some doubt. Everything in your presentation should say, I'm the best man for the job. In the lady's case, I'm the best woman for the job.
Like, for example, is it important to show that you're suitable to run that business? For example, saying like I was working in a startup which raised at 16 million, and then, I mean, should you say that?
Yes, under the team. If you can say, I'm a serial entrepreneur with past fundraising experience, with past exit experience, that's what really decorates you as a founder. Those are always kind of advantages in investor eyes. If you can display such track record, but if you could, probably you'd not be sitting in this audience. But if you could, you know, if you have someone senior in your team, and by the way, it's always a good idea to have someone senior. You know, once you're assembling a team, if you're in a position to assemble, don't build it with your 2 classmates. And worse yet, don't build it with your 2 best friends. Build with the people who have the right competences, and preferably has a pretty sound background that whenever people think about it, they say, yeah, of course, these guys, they're the winners. You know, and when you go to team, you say, this guy is best at marketing because he's been in marketing for 10 years and he scored X amount of sales in this other company. And this guy is a tech guru, previously founded this and that startup, and I previously made 3 exits. You know, that alone slide will probably get you attention of any investor.
But like, okay, but you said that serial, so means if you being a CEO, if you being like a CTO, add a shareholder, not like the main person or one of the co-founders, should you still mention that? Because like I believe you have a couple years experience in Wall, like seeing the whole process, seeing like you meeting with investors, like gives you benefit. But like, should they focus that on like second slide, or should they say that in the end, or should they say that in the answers, or I should not say that for that moment?
I mean, I found it pretty interesting why a CTO would pitch in the first place. right? In any way you look, the technological guy probably is not the best presenter. But if it is, and if the marketing guy is even worse presenter, I suppose the CTO is pretty vocal then. And again, you display how good you are in the way you have prepared your slides, and in one sentence about each team member, or few words about each team member. No additional, I'm sorry if you didn't get this that I'm cool, I also have this backup slide that shows how cool I am. This doesn't happen. Did I answer that? Because if
any special recommendations for pitching products that have asymmetrical business models, so not software as a service? Any special, special flavor of what you were telling for the asymmetrical?
Well, that's a pretty narrow question.
That's what?
Pretty narrow question. If I have any flavor for asymmetrical business models. You got me on that one, sorry. I typically answer questions, but you got me on that one. No, I don't have any particular special flavors for it.
Mostly what you were describing very heavily applies to the symmetrical model, to business, to software as a service. So. Well,
it's true that 90% of everything I see and that goes on here is internet mobile. However, think about this, your business has to be scalable no matter what you do. Else you're kind of going the wrong path. Now, I had one more idea on that. That said, looking at the companies that we've invested in working with, we often find that direct sales is the best way to go. It's not exactly an answer to your question, but if startup is a business, and business is about earning money, and money earning process starts by sales, so in inbound sales and such, it's always a good idea to demonstrate that if you're going to sell ice creams, then okay, maybe ice creams, direct sales is not the top, but whatever. If you're going to do something where direct sales wins the day, and by the way, booking business model is something that is very clearly, and booking is software as a service, but the main channel in booking is direct sales. And if you know that, that already shows, also investor has to know that. Sometimes you can get smarter than the investor, but if you know that, that already shows the investor that you're on top of that game. So that's as specific as I could get for asymmetric.
So for example, if you mentioned Board Panda, the big content site from the Lithuanian team, well, there's no transaction there, right? Nobody's.
Yeah, there'll be advertising, right?
So if Board Panda was not yet so popular, how would you recommend the concept of team of Board Panda to pitch?
I mean, other than that, they'd be in pretty crowded space. It's just publishing content. So there are literally tens of thousands of competitors even here. But other than that, going back to the business model, what is their business model? Their advertising, probably, I suppose. Yes. Okay. So, it's pretty straightforward to me. How much do you buy 1,000 customers, and how much do you monetize them? And is it so specific or not so specific? It's not a tool and such. Content, if I would be pitching business like that, I would not focus on content at all. We're a cool content site, everybody knows it, like 1 million people likes us. Now, the next 10 million we're going to buy this way, attract, PR, blah, 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 because we already know the metrics, and we're going to monetize them. This is our CPM. Everyone should know the term CPM, and you should always, if using CPM, you should come up with a very fair number. If someone would have come up to me and say, I'm going to sell CPM in Lithuania for more than $10, and some people say $30, I would be very, very skeptical. Now, this weekend in conference, someone walked up to me and said, we have a CPM of $1.50 and we're actually profitable. And I thought, okay, this person knows what they're talking about. It's not as odd as it would seem. In fact, quite a lot of internet industry is built like that and makes money that way. Any more questions? Please say no. Thank you. You've been a great audience.